common business language sounds good in theory, but deteriorates in application. Theoretically, a common spoken business language would allow for more harmonious communication by decreasing language barriers between multinational businesses. In practice, however, it becomes a long, arduous process which puts great strain on employees and fails to facilitate communication. English as a business lingua franca is impractical because of the negative impact of adopting a common language on the business and employees, the language barriers that remain post-adoption, and the nature of the English language itself. Implementing an English-only policy in an organization requires enormous expenditures of time and funds, frustrates employees, and decreases efficiency. Sadal Neely from the Harvard Business School highlights why an English learning program is expensive. Quote, off-the-rack tuition won't cut it. If you have an aggressive environment where people work an extraordinary amount of hours and they're challenged with goals, language vendors need to make sure you're capable of learning successfully while being successful at your job. End quote. This means customized language learning mediums complete with ongoing testing, which come at a premium. The testing is necessary to assess baseline levels and to ensure the employees meet benchmarks. Next, consider the time and frustration involved in teaching all employees English. Neely studied a case of English-only implementation 2 years after initiation and found 70% of employees reported were still feeling frustrated with the policy. Furthermore, Neely estimates implementation is a, quote, 4 to 10 year odyssey, end quote. The implications of this expensive, arduous distraction for the business can be immense. A large expenditure that could have been spent on other operations will be tied up in the language program, reducing available capital. As they learn, employees will communicate at a lower level of proficiency, retarding communications both internally and externally, while simultaneously hurting morale and decreasing efficiency. Language barriers will remain in the form of reduced ability to express oneself, accents and pronunciation issues, and miscommunication due to contextual interpretation. Workers will have a drastically reduced vocabulary, and this will translate into an inability to express oneself. As an article in the Houston Chronicle states, quote, workers who are not fluent in the primary language used in the workplace may have difficulty expressing their needs or responding to the requests from colleagues. If their job involves customer contact, they may have difficulty understanding a customer's inquiry and provide incorrect or misleading information, end quote. Even as the employee does learn to successfully communicate on a basic level, when they are involved in foreign transactions, they will suffer from an inability to fully express themselves, which could mean the difference between landing a deal or losing it. The Houston Chronicle article continues, quote, a customer who is unable to clearly understand the worker due to a heavy accent or lack of command of the language may become frustrated and take his business elsewhere, end quote. The difficulty of learning a language and the degree of accent depends on the employee's native tongue. An article from Forbes magazine states, quote, European countries speak great English, Asian countries are in the middle, and everywhere else lags, end quote. Now consider this quote from a Bloomberg article which states, quote, workers in India, Singapore, and Saudi Arabia were the most likely to say their jobs involved interacting with people in other countries, with 59%, 55%, and 50% saying so respectively, end quote. This means the people who have the second and third hardest time learning English are the ones most likely to be speaking it as a lingua franca. Aside from the difficulty in learning the language, the remaining accent can be enough to halt communication, as the Forbes article, quote, illuminates. Again, this leads to inefficiency in the company and lost customers, resulting in less revenue and a poor reputation. Some of this difficulty is to blame on the nature of English language itself. English is not an easy language to learn due to its words with multiple meanings and spellings, as well as rich sound systems. Multiple meanings and spellings, such as two, and two, easily confuse non-native speakers and represent a significant hurdle to overcome when learning the language. This, coupled with the richness of the language, makes the goal of fluency even more daunting. An article from Exmanual.com RSS states, quote, generally more exotic new sounds mean more difficulty learning a language. English has a very rich set of sounds. It has the ability to string consonants and vowels together almost arbitrarily, end quote. These are the highlights of the difficulties of learning English, and by far not a complete list. It does, however, illuminate the complexity of the English language. Between the negative impacts of English adoption on the business and employees, the post-adoption language barriers that will remain, and the nature of the English language, making English the lingua franca is impractical. Reduced efficiency, large expenditures of time and money, and frustrated employees is the formula for strained operations. Strong accents and miscommunication due to contextual issues drive customers elsewhere, reducing revenue. Finally, English, with its rich, complex sounds and multiple meanings and spellings, represents an unreasonably daunting choice of lingua franca.